When it comes to concrete placement, number one, safety. Safety precautions. Wear your hard hats, protect your skin, whether it's gloves, long sleeves, long pants, and then, of course, most important, goggles and safety glasses to cover protecting your eyes. We have different mixes available. Most concrete supply places now have an ICF mix when you talk to them, and it'll be a specific mix. It's usually a 20 or 25 MPa, and quite often you use a P stone. So here's the recommendations. It's a chart that we can supply to make sure that you're being covered off and using the proper mix when you go to pour your walls. One of the most important things about it is this recommended 3 to 4 feet per hour. When it comes to safety, you're not supposed to pour concrete more than 4 feet per hour. So if you stay within that and something ever happens, you're fine. And you just make sure the job site goes well and safe. Different ways to pour some concrete in the walls. Concrete boom truck's probably the most common nowadays. Conveyor belts are still used where it can be reached. The chutes on the back of the mixers isn't used very often because a lot of places now you are not allowed to come within a certain distance of an excavation, so the chutes don't reach. And then years ago, when I first started, we used to use crane and buckets. And it's a very archaic system whereby you have about a 3/4 meter of concrete being released at a given time out of a bucket that is put up with a crane, and it can be very very dangerous to work that way. But so most common, concrete boom trucks. When it comes to the size of the crew, minimum of 4. We can stack walls with 2, 3 people, no problem. But when it comes to pouring the walls, we want to have at least 4 people on hand, just for the sake of the fact you're dealing with the concrete. And you always start the pour approximately 2 feet away from a corner, then work around the wall and doing a circular motion. So you just keep going around and around and try and stay to that 3, 4 feet per hour. When it comes to the 90-degree corner specifically, avoid pouring directly into the corner. If you start 2 or 3 feet away, let the concrete flow into the corner, and then you jump to the other side of that and let it flow back in, you minimize the amount of pressure that's actually on that form in the corner. And then, of course, ensure proper concrete consolidation. Pouring around the windows and door bucks. You're going to fill the buck opening in the bottom, and then you're going to fill up both sides so that it comes up just slightly past the opening in the bottom. What that tends to do is by the time you come around the next round, it has held and will not facilitate the concrete coming up through your center hole that's in your buck. So it's just an easy way to make sure that the wall gets filled properly, and then you're going to vibrate between each layer, obviously, to make sure you have proper consolidation. One of the things I like to do is when I have a lintel above, we'll put a piece of wood across to make sure that when we scoot our hose going laterally across the top of a wall, we don't get remnants of concrete in that cavity as we go around each time, which causes poor consolidation at the end. This way we take the piece of wood off in the last run. It's a nice clean cavity and it's full of fresh concrete. And then again, of course, proper consolidation is the key when it comes to pouring concrete in these ICF walls. Consolidation. Consolidation eliminates pockets, honeycombing, and trapped air, allowing it to mold around the rebar and embedments. It's internally consolidated, mechanical vibrators used, usually a pencil vibrator. And there are systems out there that have external vibration, which are basically a plate on each side, and there's a frequency sent through to create the vibration. Most common in our areas is the mechanical vibrator, and we suggest using a pencil vibrator of up to 1.25 inches. So immediately after each concrete pour lift, you're going to want to completely immerse the vibrator head down into that concrete. If you're going into a layer below, you want to make sure that those 2 layers get consolidated together. You hold it from 5 to 15 seconds, and then you just pull it up, and then you move from laterally along the wall and repeat that same process. You're going to move the vibrator and insert it in a distance of 1.5 times the radius of action. There's a chart to the right here that kind of helps with that description. And what we find is basically every second cavity works best. Penetrate 6 inches into the previous layer just to make sure you're getting that proper bond. And then as you pour each lift, you want to go down through to the one before, especially since a certain amount of time, probably about an hour has gone by, you want to make sure that gets consolidated. When the surface gets kind of shiny, it'll talk to you. It'll let you know what's going on. So stop when the surface becomes shiny and move over to the next. When it comes to finishing the pour, if the second floor is going to be poured above, you want to stop with concrete lower than the top of wall to make sure that you're going to get a keyway back into that wall. It'll help tie everything together. If it's the final course of the block, when you go to pour, you want to trowel the concrete off with a laser and then make sure you wet set your anchor bolts that's going to carry your top plate. After the pour, immediately after the pour, check your corners for plumbness and your walls for straightness. Using the bracing alignment systems, you're going to want to make sure you line up to your string. If you have to pull the wall inward, it is best to put a brace on the exterior and push it back in. What happens is we are only screwed to the walls through the webs with a small, usually a number 10 screw, so a lot of times you won't have the strength in that wall to pull it back in without breaking loose. And then, of course, the biggest thing is clean up your braces. Your platforms, while the concrete's still wet, it's just a lot easier to do that cleanup. When it comes to blowouts on ICF walls, one of the things I tell my guys is we'll talk about blowups, we'll get a blowout kit ready, we'll get a few pieces of OSB or plywood, we'll get some 2x4s, we'll get some screws, we'll get to make sure the chargers, the screw guns are charged up, we'll have a ladder, and then we'll have this conversation and nothing will happen. On the days that we don't have this conversation is usually when something will happen.